How we doing, coin traders? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at Internet Computer ICP on that ticker. Been a little bit since we've looked at it, so do have plenty of things to talk about right now in a pretty good, nice little structure set up on an attempt for a little bit of a reversal right here. And as I mentioned over on my Twitter and X, did point out that the ICP chart setup is one of the strongest for the altcoins right now. And we are going to be diving into talking about why that is in depth a little bit more in the show today. So if you are enjoying, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Stay updated on all types of crypto content and all types of ICP updates. So I do want to start off on this daily chart and specifically look at the last little bit of daily candles here, because if we actually draw a support line for daily closes, we can see that based on where we ended up closing for the candle that ended up being on the 13th of May, had a pretty nice close, and that was our trend low for this pullback. Now, essentially, if we do look left right now, we did see that we're holding a level of closing support on top of this actually. So we did have closing support coming in previously at right around 1184. So we know that this is a very big supportive zone, especially with the close on the candle that happened on the 13th of May. Now, what's great and significant about this is the level of bullish volume for 3 consecutive days and follow through that we actually saw following this bounce. So once we had the spinning top candle, we actually had an inside bar before the following candle had a very nice bullish structure where we actually did break above this 12-period exponential moving average. You can see that the candle that closed just yesterday, we did have a bearish candle, but the body of the bearish candle was only about half of the bullish candle of the previous day. Additionally, we're also looking at a potential third inside bar. So what this means is that the price range trading, let's actually go ahead and zoom in on it a little bit. If we look at the price, let's go ahead and turn off volume. You can see that the price range for the day was actually inside the range of the price trading for the previous day. So that's what we're getting right now, although we are only a handful of hours into the current daily candle. But typically, these are a lot more symbolic of a little bit more of a consolidation type pattern. And typically, when we do find a breakout, whether we do break out bearish below the previous inside bar or above, is kind of that indication, typically like we find in normal consolidation breakouts, where it does favor, obviously, the breakout direction. So what we really would love to see on the current daily candle is the bulls be able to actually rally up and defend on top of this 12-period exponential moving average. That would be pretty huge for the bulls to be able to find in that instance, because then it would be reclaiming that level that was lost on yesterday's daily candle, despite having the bulls have a very nice close on top of this 12-period exponential moving average. So what's next after that? Well, you can't actually break and change the trend without taking out all these exponential moving averages first, and that's one of the reasons why that is so critical, especially because on this bounce, you can see that we immediately lost it after a few days, despite having this very nice bullish uptrend here. So in order to actually see a lot more bullish pressure, kind of what we failed to do in this instance, where we did get rejected by the 12, rallied up, barely broke it, but immediately lost it, and a lot of follow through from the bears to the downside, pushing prices down to that 1170 level that we're trying to defend and break bullish from. So now up overhead, if we actually talk about the level of previous closing support that did turn into resistance, theoretically, now we would have that aligned with about the 26-period EMA. So coming in at 1284.4 for that. And right now we're looking at the 12-period EMA being 1280.06. But anticipation is that if we do wait a little bit more, we will have a little bit of a zone here, and probably that will align just fine with what we've seen in the past for previous supports and closes. Now, however, if we do in fact actually see this level of closing resistance hold up pretty much right at the 1250 line, and we do see resistance maintain in between the 12 and 26 period exponential moving averages, as well as resistance holding for the close below this 1284 level, then likely in that instance we will experience another back test of the support zone right now from 1170 to 1184. And if we do get a bearish close below that level, then that will be a little bit of a bearish sign that likely we're going to maintain exponential moving average resistance, path of least resistance being to the downside, and then we would look back down to the previous level of closing support on the low coming off of the trend move at 1290 down to 1260. Personally, I'd be a little bit more surprised if that does happen, just since the majority of the price trading over the last 4 months has maintained in this overall zone. So I don't actually expect bearish pressure to continue maintaining to the downside as we do see prices heading lower. I don't think that's likely, because if it was, we probably would have seen a little bit more downside pressure right now instead of just being able to maintain this overall price trading zone. So for example, if I actually turn on VPVR, volume profile visible range, you can see how the big area right now that we're looking center of mass, almost at the $13 level, has been the big point. You can just see how much volume has come in pretty much from the $11 level all the way up until about the $15 level. Has been extremely strong in terms of volume and price trading for ICP Internet Computer. So typically in terms of this VPVR, we know that since we are below the peak point of mass for volume, that's going to be a little bit more resistance as we do head to the upside, but pretty much we're going to be looking at a decrease in pressure if the bulls can push prices above about the 1360 level. So especially getting stuck up on these exponential moving averages, as well as finding this big point of mass for VPVR, just shows how critical it is for the bulls to actually push prices above this level and actually see prices pushing on top of about the 1360 level. And so from current price points to that 1360 level, we would be looking at a gain of about just shy of or just over 10%, so around the 12% level or so. But like we talked about, based off of the overall decreasing selling pressure for this ICP chart coming in, we know that especially holding some of these lower supports, even though we have been maintaining lower highs in an overall downtrend, we've still been maintaining closing supports, and that's pretty much what is important, is maintaining a longer zone of support, which does confirm confidence in a lot of investors' minds here. So essentially what we are still expecting is that even if we do get a little bit more sideways chop with low volume, that's not going to be a bad thing, because as long as we don't see an increase in selling pressure and prices dipping below these supports that we talked about, we'll actually maintain this overall sideways zone and channel until we do get more bullish pressure to actually start to break up through some of these resistance points and actually push prices back to the upside and resume a longer uptrend. So now I do want to flip into the weekly chart, because the weekly chart is one of the things that initially was one of the extremely bullish things, and it still is really bullish compared to the rest of the altcoin space. But one of the things to note that did happen recently was just this overall bearish break in the otherwise strong closing level of support that we had for the weekly. So unfortunately it did break below this level, and what was significant about that is that on this whole run up, we were maintaining closing support on top of this 12-period EMA, and despite having several attempts and prices pushing below this level, bulls did buy the dip, and then ultimately, after coming off the trend high, saw this level fail, but we still maintain closing support on this weekly, in between and above the 26-period exponential moving average. So on the current weekly candle that just lost that, not only did we confirm resistance across the 12-period EMA, we also confirmed breaking the closing level of support for this 26-period exponential moving average. Now, on the current week, we're desperately trying to see bulls actually reclaim that level. And obviously, when we do lose a candle, it's important and imperative that we actually see the following candle reclaim that level in order to confirm this as a false signal. So one of the things that we are struggling against now is just this upside level of weekly closing. So previous support now flipped into resistance. And as you can see, we've already tested it on the current weekly candle as indicated by this upper wick. So do have just under 3 days to close this weekly candle. So do still have some time for the bulls to push back above this level and invalidate breaking this level of closing support as well, on top of breaking this level for 26-period exponential moving average also. Like we mentioned, though, an overall selling pressure and a decrease in selling pressure is what we have seen on the longer term charts. So we know that especially with this type of setup, it's not necessarily likely to see a continuation of longer term downside action just based on selling pressure starting to get exhausted, especially after a pullback that we were looking at where the bulls did retrace almost 50% from the high, yet still maintaining one of the best weekly structures that we've seen in the altcoin and crypto space on this current move and rally. Now, I do still think that overall we're in a very nice Wyckoff accumulation pattern where we are starting to see our sign of strength in our phase D and getting ready for the overall crypto space, because a lot of other altcoins are set up in this accumulation type pattern where we have just been seeing this phase D sign of strength accumulation here, and actually in a period of consolidation where we're just looking for that big, massive breakout and rally where we'll likely see prices just absolutely explode as we do continue this bullish cycle. Obviously, no predictions for time on that, but just overall sentiment for crypto is starting to heat up because right now, especially being able to maintain a chart setup like this without any sort of hype momentum or FOMO money coming in, it's great to see the chart setup maintaining this type of structure, especially as we know that in a Wyckoff setup type pattern, we do have our accumulation zone. We test the lows, rally up to a very nice phase D, consolidate, and then have a very explosive phase E breakout. So now I do want to talk about Bitcoin here because we actually have a very, very nice structure maintaining and forming again. And especially when we see a Bitcoin starting to take off again, this does have impact on the overall altcoin space. Now, although we do have Bitcoin dominance at about 60% right now, so altcoins aren't necessarily as strong, we do know that altcoins do follow Bitcoin, and that typically when we do see Bitcoin in an uptrend, we're still also going to see altcoins in an uptrend as well. So very nice structure right now on Bitcoin, and nice to see a little bit more bullish action and follow through, along with a decrease in selling pressure for Bitcoin over the last couple of months as well. Now, it is still very possible that we ultimately end up going into a little bit more longer term consolidation for Bitcoin. That's not necessarily a bad pattern at all. And especially if it does do that, then that could potentially lead into a scenario for an altcoin rally. But even if we do see altcoins just sit sideways as well for a little bit, that's not the worst sign ever as well, especially as we do head into the fall when we're anticipating a much greater movement from historical trends. So definitely something to be considering and keeping our eye on, but otherwise ICP is still looking very good and very strong for an altcoin right now, especially in this space, despite pulling back 50% or so. Now, I do want to flip over here into the 2-day chart because I just want to look at these exponential moving averages because this is the first time right now since the initial fall rally here when we exploded almost to 7x for ICP that we've actually started to see losing the exponential moving averages on the 2-day chart, which does mean losing the longer term path of least resistance to the upside, especially now since we have gotten confirmation of these candles coming in and actually being a resistance on a lot of the previous support levels. So they are confirmed as that resistance point, which does mean right now, especially since we've already had our full bearish cross of the 12 over the 26 now and the 12 over the 50 as well. Now just looking for the 26 to finally happen over the 50, and we will be in a full bearish scenario setup. So that does mean upside resistance is going to be extremely strong, especially since these are so tight. That does mean it is going to create a pretty big resistive zone and overall resistive level for ICP right now. So now on this 2-day chart, the most relevant resistive and supportive line here is actually going to be coming in pretty much right around 1160. So as we can see on the current test, previous test, previous test, previous test, previous resistance test, support test, and then flipping back into resistance test as well. So very, very relevant level for support and resistance, which we do need to see hold up at 1160. So very critical. So we do have extreme resistance to the upside, pretty much coming in right around the 13.25 level, and then all the way down to 1160. Personally, here, I don't see and anticipate it taking too much longer than about a week in order to get confirmation on what we will see for directional breakout, whether we'll see the bulls actually rally up to break through these resistance levels of the EMA, or whether or not we'll actually see resistance rejection and break through this extremely critical and massive level of closing support that we've been holding for essentially 4 months now. So overall, nothing too major like we discussed. If we do end up seeing bullish price action pushing prices to the downside below the 1160 level and a daily and 2-day close below that, that would start to give me cause for concern that we're going to start to see longer term downside pressure continuing. But right now, especially based off the rest of the crypto space and the way this chart has set up has been holding, as well as a lot of these previous and lower supports holding, it does seem like a pretty overall solid setup. And it probably is going to take some time right now, so still nothing super exciting. But like I said, I do expect some type of directional confirmation here in the next week or so. So just continue to be patient, and we will be providing updates closer and when that actually does happen. So with that, that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up the show today for Internet Computer ICP on that ticker. Hope you all enjoyed. Once again, if you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Do appreciate all the continuous love and support as always. It always does mean so much. That's it for now though, so stay safe, coin traders. Take care, and I'll catch you back in the next video.